Buckle up, Buttercups. Let's go. Look who it is. Brad Olsen's with us, and we're going to talk about secrets under the ice of Antarctica, the untold story of the ice continent. Actually, this book is not available yet, and it's already sold out, and hopefully more will be on the way. But you can get yours at Amazon, also CCCP Publishing. Is that right? Or is it CCCP? Triple C's?
CCC Publishing.
That's cool. You're just one C away from, I'm just saying. So do you ever get people confused? They're like, oh, I thought I was contacting the Chinese military. Oh, it's just
or the old Soviet Union with Yuri Gagarin, CCCP on his helmet.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. No, folks, we're not talking about that today. We're talking about Antarctica. So Brad he has been researching Antarctica. I think this has been one of your pet projects for decades, for years. And I had an opportunity to speak with the last surviving member who was involved in Operation Highjump a few years ago. Really nice guy, but I didn't get any key details from him. He was a super nice guy, and he laughed a lot because I don't know if he thought the questions I was asking was funny or he was just being nice about it. But there has been new information that has presented itself since that conversation that Brad is going to share with us. And so, Brad, it's good to see you, man. Thanks for spending time out of your schedule with us. How are you doing?
Hey, Rex, I'm doing great. Nice to see you. I'm just back from the UK. A week ago, I was speaking at the Bases Project with Miles Johnston, who has incredible amount of great speakers, including Harold Kotzvela and David Griffin, who spoke about the Black Goo. And that's actually a chapter in Secrets of Antarctica because it was discovered down near Antarctica in the Falkland Islands War. That was what it was all about, for the Brits to collect that. We can talk about that a little later, but I'm doing great. Like you said in the setup, the first print run has already sold through before publication date in 2 days. That only means that pre-sales have been very brisk. There are new books being printed as we speak. So the supply chain shouldn't break down too much, although it'll be a little bit of a delay if you order through CCC Publishing, because I'm going to get copies in about 3 weeks.
Great. And I'm looking for my autographed copy. So I'm going to put it right on the desk here and show it off when you send it to me. This is cool, man.
You've been an influence in this book, Rex. Our interviews and our discussions, and your interview with Robert Johnston, the last survivor of Operation Highjump. It's all data points that put together this mosaic called the Secrets of Antarctica. So I thank you for your assistance in this project over the years.
It's an honor, brother. Absolutely. Now, the first thing I thought of when you brought up the Black Goo is I thought of the X-Files and how a lot of the X-Files episodes, they actually took case studies and information from actual events and turned it into their TV episodes. And I think that's really cool. Doc Ram, I think, was involved in a few episodes of the X-Files. So tell us about, if you don't want to start on the Black Goo, where should we start, man? I'm giving you open microphone right now. Do we start at the beginning of the book, or do we start halfway through?
Well, I guess I opened that rabbit hole a little bit. So maybe we should start with the Black Goo, because let me just say, it's in movies and TV shows, and art imitates life oftentimes. And it's also the revelation of the method, that in many ways they have to tell us what they're up to, or these kind of discoveries, because we live on a free will planet and they can't just blow it off and pull a hoodwink over our eyes every time. So they do it, and they disguise it in the form of mass media. And so, like you said, in X-Files, they bring it up, and the movie Prometheus and dozens others, where you see this sentient black oil. And that's exactly what it is. And the story behind it is that the Argentinians were working with it in a frozen island called South Thule Island. And it's right here. There's nothing there. It's very difficult to reach. But I think the base was right here where it's blacked out by Google Earth. You see that a lot in some of these sensitive locations. They won't give you the visual cue of where it's at. And I've seen that time and time again looking at Antarctica with Google Earth. But the Falkland Wars was fought on two fronts. A lot of people do not know this. This is a Wikipedia map. And so I remember it in junior high during the Falkland Wars. And it was like every day we were watching the ships get closer and closer to the Falkland Wars. And of course, when they got there, it explodes into a war. That was all we heard in the US about the Falkland Wars. It wasn't until I started hearing these interviews on the Bases Project that it was a two-front war. And the other front went down to the South Sandwich Islands and Toole Island, where there were only 8 researchers at the Corbetta, Uruguay base. And they just put up the white flag. No shots were fired, but the war actually ended at that base aboard the ship that was there for the surrender papers. So something was very, very important about the British acquiring this base, which is pretty standard base. And I'll just show you what happened when they got it. Then the Brits capture it, and then they blow it up. They completely destroy it and go in and collect this black goo from a cave. And they take it back to the UK, and they wanted to use it for their super soldier program, because when ingested in small amounts, it will enhance the soldiers' stamina and fighting ability, and even their ability to withstand extreme climate or temperatures. So they'd be good for working in the bases of Antarctica, or they'd be good in the secret space program in outer space. So the Brits wanted this stuff really bad, and they fought the Falkland Wars specifically to get it. But when they got it and they started to try to backward engineer it and study it, the stuff started getting loose. And so they brought it over to Marconi Laboratories, and that's where many scientists that were working on it died under very mysterious circumstances, or committed suicide, or just took themselves out. About 24 people. And then it kind of got away from them in the Marconi Laboratories, but in the programs with the military, they continued to use it, and now it has been weaponized. So it's the last chapter of the book, but I think it's one of the most important chapters, because this black goo is this sentient life form that can also be used for cloning. It can rapidly clone any object or living life form. And so that was the backstory of why it was actually brought here, because in the 71,000 years ago, there was a huge eruption on Lake Toba in Sumatra in Indonesia. I've been there. Beautiful lake, tropical volcanic caldera. And when it exploded, it created that nuclear winter scenario with so much ash up in the air that humans were dying off left and right. And about a decade or two later, the total amount of humans on this planet could fit into a large football stadium like Texas Stadium. That's how few humans there were. And that's why they call it the Eve gene, that there is this select genetics that point to just a few genetic mothers, the matrilineal DNA in the human race. It kind of bottlenecks around this time because there were so few humans that after we did start to multiply, we all have that genetic marker to this mitochondrial DNA 71,000 years ago. But at the time, it appeared that Earth could be taken over by a hostile ET force. So it was actually, the black goo was brought here. This is according to Alex Newler in Nexus Magazine, did a series of articles about it, in which I quote from. And he was saying that well, not only was that the reason for the Falkland Wars, but it was because they wanted to weaponize it and use it for nefarious reasons. And so in his article called Co-Evolution in Nexus Magazine, Alex Newald, he says that that they took it by force, that the Argentinians that were working on it were studying it in kind of a benevolent manner, because when it's down there in Saltule Island and frozen, it's inert. It cannot come to life. But when the Brits took it, and Miles Johnston, who puts on the Bases Project, had several speakers who were eyewitness to the takeout of the black goo up to the UK, that when they got close to the equator, the stuff started to animate itself and started to come alive. So if you were to put your finger near the tank, it would rise up to try to match and meet you, because it wants to get into any living organisms. So that's kind of the gist of the black goo. Now it has been weaponized. Versions of the black goo are in the graphene oxide, in ferrofluids, and also has been detected coming down in the residue of the chemtrailing of the planet. And so then you get these really weird diseases that are popping up, like Morgellons syndrome, which is a 21st century disease, now a syndrome, meaning that it's worldwide. And Morgellons is even popping up in animals because they're breathing these nanoparticles that are coming down that are self-assembling inside living organisms. So it's weird science to an nth degree. And I think that's why the X-Files and other movies had to portray it, because it has been festooned upon all living organisms on the world right now. Even pets and farm animals are showing signs of Morgellons disease, as well as people all around the world.
So the Morgellons stuff, like I've been studying that, and I even interviewed a gentleman that has these weird wires and objects that come out of his body, and it's absolutely frightening. I do want to let people know, though, like a lot of times when you're looking in the, you're looking at the clouds and you see a plane and it's, there's this trail coming from behind it and you're like, oh, that's got to be a chemtrail. So the majority of the time it's not. Like 99% of the time you think chemtrails, like it's actually contrails that you can get there's an app on your phone you can get that'll show you exactly what flight that is and what, where it's going, where it came from. Now, I did find in my research, because I've been studying the chemtrail, contrail phenomena for like over 20 years now, there's substances, there's actually ingredients they can put in the jet fuel to help create this cloud cover. Now, whether they're doing that or not, I don't know. But because we do have a weakened magnetosphere, a lot of times when you see airplanes and you think they're spraying extra additional chemicals, they're most likely not. Now, what I think you're talking about, Brad, is there have been experiments where people have taken after what they think, like they'll see how these planes potentially spray in the skies, they'll get out and test samples, and some very weird samples have came back, like some really weird stuff. So, I can't confirm this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were certain places that specific experiments have been done over small areas where they're like, oh, well, let's test this. Let's see what happens if we put this in the atmosphere. I can't confirm that, but I wouldn't be surprised. And I know that there have been a lot of people that have had these weird anomalies coming out of their skin, looks like speaker wire. And then a few years ago, there was an article that came out where the researchers tried to say that it was fluoride, or that they said it was mercury or something like that. And
Fibers from clothes too.
yeah, I wasn't convinced, man.
Yeah.
I definitely, that stuff is spooky. But so do you and your research, are you seeing that it's like an actual nanotechnology with this gray goo, or not the black goo kind of stuff? Or
Yeah. Yeah, and it's behaving in the same way that it wants to collect among itself, so self-assembling in the form of these nanobots, which nano just means very, very, very small, barely discernible to the naked eye. But when breathed in, they get through the lungs and then into the stomach and then into the bloodstream where they, excuse me, can self-assemble. Sophia Smallstorm has done some great experiments collecting rainwater after heavy chemtrail days and finding all kinds of weird stuff in it.
I mean, I know that even the government now is saying that they're not going to allow specific geoengineering programs to take place. But then, it's like that double talk, because one headline comes out, no more geoengineering, we're gonna make it illegal, and then the next thing you find out, oh, the biggest cloud seeding company in the world's in Utah. It's like,
right.
Wait a second, what are you geoengineering or are you not geoengineering? What's the definition here? We just get so much gaslighting in the media. They do a great job of saying one thing and then the opposite. So it's like you create this division amongst people that are researching where, they think they got it all figured out. And I certainly don't have it all figured out. And that's why I got Brad on the show, folks, because I did interview the last surviving member of Operation Highjump. And the guy was 101 or 102 when I talked to him. Maybe he was 103. Bless his heart. Super nice guy. He calls me back. I asked him some key questions, but he didn't really give me key answers. He kind of talked around it a little bit. He laughed around it a little bit. He did say some things like, when I asked him about ETs and stuff like that, he just laughed at me. But there were different ships. There were different people and going different places in this Operation Highjump. But could you tell us more about that?
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely were 3 formations. So there was the Eastern group, the Western group, and then the Central group. The Central group is where Admiral Byrd stayed with the ships near Little America. By the way, they had to emergency evacuate out of there right around the time of the Battle of Highjump. But the East and West groups were both crisscrossing right in front of New Schwabenland, the German claim. And they were there with the express purpose of not only finding the German base there, Point 211, bombing it and eliminating it, but also to try to acquire 2 discs, 2 UFOs that they knew that the Germans had smuggled out at the end of World War II. Because they had these very, very large U-boats, which were like container ships that they could fit some of these honeyboo or vril craft in sections and bring them down there. And Captain Mark Richards, who is one of Kerry Cassidy's whistleblowers, I bought his book called Operation Highjump at a conference once. And he said that that the Nazis had created a science city, and during Highjump, they were not able to destroy it because it was under the ice. And so Robert Johnson, the last survivor of Highjump, he did some interviews at the very end of his life, including with you. And some of those interviews, he said that they landed on the ice in New Schwabenland, and they found this crack that was perfectly straight and symmetrical that just went for miles. And when they got closer to it under further examination, they found that heat was emanating from it. And he said he could hear some buzzing sound way down deep into it. So like machinery that was running. So that kind of freaked him out. And that tipped him off that the Nazis were below the ice. They may have had some outbuilding bases above the ice that were bombed during Highjump, but by far the large majority of personnel and staff and material went to the underground bases. So when I was working on this book about a year ago, a research assistant came to my attention, and he had some U-boat maps that came out of the Soviet Union. Because remember, the Soviets were the very first to take the Berlin. And so with it, they got all the best intel from the three fighting forces, the Wehrmacht, the Luftwaffe, and the Kriegsmarine, as well as the Ahnenerbe Society. But some of these U-boat Navy maps show the very exact dimensions of how to get to this under ice base. Not only that, but in written form. And you'll see here, they're meant to go to the lighthouse of Agartha. And so we've translated these diving directions. But to me, this is the smoking gun, Rex, that we now have evidence that the Germans were not only traversing under the ice, but mapping it out and building some of their bases there, including New Berlin, which I think was the science city that Captain Mark Richards spoke about. So that was Byrd's fourth trip to Antarctica during Operation Highjump, which ended prematurely 2 months into the 6-month expedition. They turned around with their tail between their legs and ran back to the U.S. as fast as they could, but not before Admiral Byrd gave a interview with that ran in El Mercurio newspaper about having a new enemy that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. So what I think he was talking about were these UFOs that came up out of the water, and this is the Battle of Highjump, or it's also called the Battle of Antarctica, which is only about 20 minutes, but a very one-sided affair in which the Allies were completely routed and could not shoot down any of these UFO crafts, which came up out of the water and then in the distance out of holes in the ice. So we were dealing with an enemy that had far superior technology. So when Byrd went, well, then what else happened after the rout in Antarctica in 1947? Then you have the flyover of Washington, D.C. Not 1 day, but 2 days. It happened again 4 days later. And
wait a second. Wait, real quick. So just a few days after we go to that location in Antarctica, that's shortly after, days after spacecraft or flying saucers fly over the White House.
No, not days after. It was 52. So about 5 years later, or 4.5 years later, then you have these swarms of UFOs.
Okay.
Because they were worried the Allies were going to come back with a much bigger fighting force. So they had to basically show with these same UFOs that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds to go over the US. But we knew that they had bases there since 1941 when this article, and it ran on the wire, also the New York Times, that Nazi bases in Antarctica. This article is dated before the U.S. entered the war after Pearl Harbor, when Germany declared war on the U.S. So we already knew they were down there. And then Highjump happens. So as soon as they could possibly go with an invasion force, and Admiral Byrd at a press conference before Highjump said that his mission was military in nature. So he goes down there with this invasion force, 3 different branches of ships.
Tell us how big these forces are.
Right off Neuschwabenland. Yeah.
How big are these forces, Brad? Will you give us the numbers on those again?
Oh, yeah. Well, 4,600 men, about 24 ships, 30 some airplanes, as well as a submarine and an aircraft carrier. and nearly all of the planes were lost. One of the ships got sunk with a very exotic energy weapon, like perhaps a DOO weapon that sliced the USS Maddox in half during that Battle of Highjump. And that was enough for Byrd to call it off. So then you get the flyover in 52. Then Byrd goes back down there for the fifth and final time in Operation Deep Freeze. And what Captain Mark Richards revealed in his military document book called Operation Highjump was that they had negotiated an uneasy truce with the Antarctica Germans, and all the Americans wanted was that UFO. So they gave them one, probably an older version, and then they took off right away with the aircraft carrier that had it. The reason for Operation Highjump was to set up permanent bases, which we did, but we were going down there to get that technology. So the uneasy truce was, okay, we won't attack you again like Highjump, but you got to share your technology with us. And so they gave him that UFO, but I think they found out that UFO really wasn't top of the line technology, because also keep in mind, the US brought in all the paperclip Nazis, hundreds, perhaps even 1,000. I think the numbers are actually low. Here's a picture of some of the paperclip Nazis that came over to the US in 1945 to work on our space programs, like Werner von Braun and Hermann Oberth, who at his retirement party, when asked, how did Germany get so advanced so fast? He said, well, we had some help from our friends from above. So they were obviously working with alien tech and put it into their own UFO crafts. And there were about a dozen known UFOs that were created by the Germans, starting with the smaller Vril craft and then moving up into the Honeyboo, and then even the Andromedan mothership craft, which could house several of the other smaller crafts too. So a lot of these blueprints and documents came out later to a journalist named Robert Ettel, and it was just a huge packet that he got delivered to his doorstep with blueprints for some of these ships. And this is the Andromedan cigar-shaped craft, very similar to what the whistleblower in the UK saw, but maybe we had already backward engineered that technology and created our own cigar-shaped craft. Because this thing, you can even see some of the craft that could be housed on the inside of it. Smaller Vril craft and then a Honeyboo craft, which were then built for battle. And there's even a model airplane. Well, I guess it's more of a disc by Revell, the model making company, that David Hatcher Childress, who also writes books on this, he bought one of these, the Honeyboo 2 flying saucer model craft by Revell. And this was the one, the Honeyboo 2 was the one they weaponized. That was the one that most likely was the craft that came up out of the water that confronted Byrd in the Battle of Highjump.
Man, so what a trip. And I'm reading the comments. Sherry says Byrd gave an interview and died right after.
Yes. So after Highjump, he comes back from Antarctica and is basically read the riot act for giving that interview with El Mercurio. He goes into quarantine. They do kind of a whole bunch of studies and tests on him. Then he meets some of the high brass of the Pentagon, and they remind him, you're still a military man and you are not to speak of this ever again. So Byrd was given a gag order for the rest of his life. He basically keeps to that and then goes back down for Operation Deep Freeze. And then he comes back and gives that interview with Longines Watch Company, where he says that young explorers will find new things to discover if they're to go beyond the pole. He says it several times. And you think, what is beyond the pole? At the South Pole, it is the 2-mile thick polar plateau that goes for hundreds of miles in all directions with no change, what we've been told. But 50 miles away from that South Pole is the giant hole in the ice. And so I think that's what he was talking about, because that's what he described when he flew into it. One of the first flights of Operation Highjump, so in November 46, he goes back to the South Pole, which he discovered. And people have to understand that. He was the very first aviator to fly over the South Pole, and most certainly he would have seen it. He would have seen the giant hole in the ice, because he also, and here I have the map of his original flight in 1929. This is the full route, and then this is the blow up at the pole. And look at that. Rather than just getting to the pole and doing a fist bump, yeah, we made it, he goes about 100 miles out of his way in a triangular shape. And that's really interesting, because that triangular shape is the exact location of the no-fly zone over the South Pole to this day. And when I flip to the map here, you'll see, well, this is the diary of Admiral Byrd, who describes going back there in 1946, the dates, exactly the time he is in Antarctica, and goes back there to the same location that he would have seen the hole when he did that extra 100 miles to basically fly over the clean air sector. So here's the blow up, here's the pole. Just like Byrd flew to the pole, then does this triangular shape over the clean air sector. And so Brian S., who is one of Linda Moulton Howe's whistleblowers, and she put me in touch with him, or gave me his contact info. I talked to him for an hour, Rex, and this is his map. Also, same location where the hole in the ice is, that Byrd flew, that he flew back to, and then the Brian S. flew over it. And this is what he told me, Rex. Him and the whole crew, half a dozen guys, they had to do an emergency evacuation, and they defied the no-fly zone to get this person to the Davis base as soon as possible. It was a life or death matter. So they defied the no-fly zone. And he said that that whole clean air sector is just a cover story. There were no buildings, no stations, no detection systems. It was just to keep anybody from seeing the hole in the ice via an airplane. And so they fly over it, and just everybody is amazed. They're talking on the headsets to each other. They saw all these snowmobile tracks and cat tracks from the South Pole base that headed out towards it. And this is what blew me away. He said that those cat track trails led to a road that corkscrews down. He says, as far as they could see down the hole, this road led down into the ice to a ground level. So Byrd, it's big enough to fly a plane into it several miles across. You could fly a plane into it. You could drive the road into it. And then we found with these U-boat maps, you can also navigate under the ice all the way to within about 100 miles of the South Pole with a U-boat. So Brian S. and his associates, they do the drop off. They get the guy to the Davis base, and then when they're flying back, they said, "Hey, let's divert again and get another look at it." And while they were heading in to look at the hole in the ice again, over the radio comes, "Hey, do not divert from your track. You're not supposed to fly over the no-fly zone." They land at South Pole Base. They didn't. They kind of went back and followed instructions. And when they got there, they were read the riot act. So there are NSA personnel on the South Pole Base. They also have an unmarked building at McMurdo that everybody knows about. And they were basically told, you didn't see what you saw. You can't talk about it ever again. While he was in the service, he never did. But he never had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So when he was out of the service, at Contact in the Desert, he met with Linda Moulton Howe. They had dinner in a Mexican restaurant. I was a speaker there that year, but I wasn't at this meeting. And then after they had their dinner, and I met Ian from the UK, who is at the Bases Project. He was at that dinner with Brian S. and Linda. And they moved out to the parking lot and just continued their discussion. Well, when Brian S. gets back home in a couple days, he gets this call from the NSA who says, "We know what you're talking about with Linda. We don't appreciate it, and we'd prefer you to stay quiet." But they didn't give him a direct order to be quiet. It was just kind of like a veiled threat that we want you to shut up. But fortunately, he didn't, although he doesn't want to release his full name yet. But he told me all about it, and Ian and Linda, who are also big proponents of this book and helped me a lot with the research phase, they said, yeah, the NSA were snooping on them the whole time and could even recite what conversation that they were having in the parking lot. And I asked him, how do you think they did that? Was it they kind of spying off their phones? He said, yeah, possibly, but also from satellite, they can hone on to a target and listen to a conversation from a satellite in outer space. So that's just mind-blowing. Not only the technology to spy on someone, but also how sensitive this information still is.
I mean, if you see a giant hole in the earth that you're not supposed to see, you definitely better expect everything that you say and everything you do to be listened to. So the fact that that person's probably got a phone, everybody else around him probably has a phone. It would be easy to ping all of those phones. My uncle 35 years ago was telling me about satellites that he was working on where they could take pictures of your shoes. He wasn't saying anything about microphones, but I would not be surprised if they had some target microphones as well that could track you where you go. But with all the smart appliances, smart electronics, cell phones, all the, the surveillance technologies, that doesn't surprise me a bit that everything that they said, they could probably play back the conversation with several different recording pieces of equipment. Fascinating. Another thing that I also thought was a great point about the poles and the amount of radiation that comes in at the poles is astronomical. It is way more than we could produce on Earth with all of our nuclear reactors and stuff. The amount of radiation that's coming in from the North and South Pole. So I wonder if that's like a part of the physics of the creation of planets. Like if that happens with planets like Earth, where because of the ozone and the atmosphere and the location, if it's just normal to have those poles. And maybe our ancestors knew about that. And that's like one of the things that's been hidden for many years is the actual, enter to the center of the earth. Now, it's been a good story for decades, right? I mean, they've got cartoons about it, like going to the center of the earth and finding dinosaurs from the 40s. So
Jules Verne, Journey to the Center of the Earth, right?
I think that's awesome. And actually, there was a president, Andrew Jackson, I think, that funded an expedition to the center of the earth. So it's not just it's not just us common folk that are interested in the center of the earth. It's also politicians and very, very rich people. I mean, it's so I think to just automatically say it's a conspiracy, and try and debunk it automatically, I think that you're doing yourself in service and injustice, because it does seem there's something out there, and I would love to go check it out. My question to you is, you've done a lot of research on the flying saucers aspect as well. In New Mexico, there were dozens of sightings in New Mexico in the 40s, and I'm wondering if you've got a connection there with Antarctica potentially in this breakaway civilization.
Well, good point, because the first nuclear explosions occurred at White Sands in New Mexico, and there were sightings of UFOs on the first detonation of a nuclear device anywhere on the planet. Now, a lot of the paperclip Nazis that came over here, some of them were nuclear scientists, and Germany was very close to detonating the very first nuclear bomb. Some people think they were, but they just didn't have enough time to create a bomb that they were going to deploy on a flight. They had a plane that could go all the way to New York City and back without refueling to drop on New York City and sue for peace. Fortunately, they never got to that point, but they definitely had the scientists and the wherewithal to create the devices, who then worked on the Manhattan Project, which detonated the first nuclear device at White Sands. And then, of course, some months later in Nagasaki and Japan and Hiroshima in Japan. And I've been to Hiroshima twice when I lived in Japan, and it is absolute devastation. But when you explode a nuclear bomb, it actually has a ripple effect throughout the other dimensions. And that is why so many ETs have warned us against exploding nuclear bombs. In fact, when Byrd flew back into the hole, into the domain of the Ariane, he met with the master. That's the only name that was given to him, who is very extraterrestrial-like, even though he was human-looking, but he was telepathic, and he read the mind of Admiral Byrd when he said, Byrd asked, "Why did you have me come here?" And he says, "Well, you're very well known on the surface world." And in Byrd's mind, he's thinking, surface world? Where am I? And the master says, "Yes, you're down below in the domain of the Ariane." And the master's warning that he wanted Byrd to take back to the Pentagon is to say, do not play around with nuclear bombs anymore. They're very dangerous. We're warning you. We don't want humans to have this technology. And Byrd did that, but to little effect on our nuclear bomb program. And so in this timeline of the US and this uneasy truce with the Germans, so they go down there for Highjump, second or fourth trip for Byrd. Then you have the flyover in DC in 52. Then he goes back there for Operation Deep Freeze, where they, according to Mark Richards, did get a UFO from the Antarctic Germans. And then he goes on the Longines radio show, and then a couple months later dies of a heart attack in his bed. And we know the CIA has had the heart attack gun for a while. I think he was perceived as being beyond his range of usefulness, that he wasn't going to be an admiral anymore. And he was starting to talk. He was starting to talk about beyond the pole. And so they had to take him out. One of the greatest American heroes, I do believe, was killed, just like his good buddy, James Forrestal, who was one of the original MK, or yeah, one of the original Ultra, not MK Ultra, but MJ-12 on there. And here he is meeting with Byrd. Byrd's giving him a stuffed penguin, both of these men would be dead within years. And James Forrestal, who was also a Navy guy, was good friends with Byrd, and I'm sure Byrd told him everything. And so Forrestal, in the months after Highjump, was known to be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon saying, the Germans are still down there. They've got UFOs and technology that we can't compete with. What do we do? We're screwed. And Truman ordered him to go to Bethesda Naval Hospital, where he never walked out alive. He was suicided out of the top window and thus silenced. And it's said that James Forrestal is the first casualty of disclosure, that he really wanted the American people to know what we were up against. And also, this is right after the Roswell crash, and then other crashes are being acquired throughout the U.S. James Forrestal wanted transparency, but the military needed to keep it all hush-hush because they wanted to backward engineer this technology. They wanted to use it. And so Byrd and Forrestal had outlived their useful life, and unfortunately, both were done away with. That's how deep this goes.
They love you so much. They would never do that. They just care about you, and they care about the world, and they want everybody to be safe and happy, and so that's their job, is to protect you, Brad.
I feel so much better now.
Don't you feel better?
Yeah,
You gotta feel better, man. It's spooky to think about. You've got me thinking about the flying. So here's my take on the flying saucers and the grays coming from Zeta Reticuli. I personally think that that's a cover story. My own thoughts here, because first of all, these grays can come from wherever. Like, they could say they come from wherever. They could say they come from a different star system or a different galaxy, and they just care about us here on Earth because of these nukes and this multi-dimensional catastrophe that they create when they're detonated. And maybe that's true, but Brad, what if they're a lot closer to home? And the reason they don't want us messing with nukes is because they know that could blow up the planet, and they're sharing the planet with us.
So here's the final chapter in nukes, is that there was a top secret nuclear bomb testing in the Southern Ocean in 1957 called Operation Argus, which, like Highjump, is still classified. And the cover story is they were testing high atmosphere nuclear testing. They had to do that right down near Antarctica for some reason. But the inside scoop is this was the final attempt to nuke the Antarctica Germans, to try to get them from this under ice redoubt. And so Operation Argus then took place unsuccessfully. They could not dislodge them 2 miles under the ice. And so right after Operation Argus, you have the beginning of the Antarctica Treaty in the late 1950s, which was signed in 59 and went into full operation in 61. But that is when, and this treaty is still in effect, but it limits where you can go. It put in the new no-fly zones, and they put in areas where tourists can go. Actually, tourism is part of the program for in the Treaty of Antarctica, as well as open for science, but to protect the whole continent. Now, one of the first clauses in the Antarctica Treaty is to say there will be no nuclear testing down here. You can't do it. And it's kind of interesting why the emphasis, unless it's already happened, to say you can't do it again. So nuclear testing and nuclear bombs are a big part of the mysteries of Antarctica. You cannot discount that Argus and other operations took place, as well as the warnings of the master not to meddle with these nuclear devices.
What were they called? What was the civilization called under the ice?
Domain of the Ariani.
Okay, think about that. Ariani, Aryan, Aryan E, Aryan, yep. Mars, Ares, the land of war.
Yeah.
So now this is just a theory of mine, folks, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a breakaway civilization that jumped ship from Mars. I don't know how long ago, because it got devastated and they had to go somewhere else in the solar system to survive. And they could potentially be the ones running the show at the very top level. Now, it's just a theory, just a crazy conspiracy theory, but that's my theory. And I think that there's a lot of data to suggest, especially if you look at Cydonia, the region of Cydonia on Mars, and how much it looks like Egypt. And then Cairo in Egypt means Camp of Mars. I think there's an ancient connection there, and I'm sticking with that theory. You can make fun of me all you want, because I think there's some data there to suggest that's pretty solid.
That's a good point. And just in a final note on Byrd flying into the hole in the ice, he was originally he lost control of the ship, okay, his plane. And then this is the start of the missing 3 hours, which is definitely documented on the Byrd flight, that he loses 3 hours. They thought he was dead back in Little America, but he's in the hole. They're seeing wild and wonderful megafauna and flora that shouldn't be there, he says in his diary. And then they're met with 2 flugel rods, which are UFOs that fly wingtip to wingtip, that have Nazi insignia on them. And over the radio comes a Germanic voice that says, "Hello, Admiral. We will be landing in the domain shortly. You're in good hands." And they actually land the plane like a helicopter, straight down. And so out come these 2 really tall Germanic white guys that escort him into the domain of the Ariani. The radio man Howie stays behind. Byrd has his meeting, and then they flew out the way they came. And the last thing they say when they gave him the controls back to his plane was "Auf Wiedersehen," which is goodbye in German. So definitely a Germanic connection down there in this whole story of Byrd in the hole in the ice.
Nye. Very interesting. Oh, so, and I got to say too, my friend Greg Allison, he's been a contractor at NASA. Like, he was a contractor at NASA. He said, make it specifically clear that I was a contractor there, but he's also been an aerospace engineer for defense contractors, super genius. Well, he's actually worked with a bunch of people that came over from the paperclip. And am I saying that right? It was paperclip, right?
Yeah, the Germans.
And he said they were really nice. He said that the people that he worked with were super nice, and they didn't act racist towards other people. They seemed just really cool and respectful. Now, that may not be all of them, but the people he worked with, he said, he just wanted to make that very clear. He's like, because a lot of people give him a bad time, but they were actually really respectful to everybody when they came over to America. I think that's pretty cool that he got a chance to work with a lot of those people in aerospace. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Puts a different perspective on things. War's pretty hardcore. So Brad, do me a favor. I'm showing off your book, and I've already got people in the chat saying they've ordered your book on pre-order just by watching this podcast. I think that's so rad. I love that. Let me show this off real quick. Boom. We just look at it.
That's it.
This is the one. Number 1, new release.
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about.
So the official release date is in 2 days from now. Amazon has ordered the lion's share of the first print run. So they do have copies. I think they can, they'll be able to get those out right away. And I think the price is going to drop quite a bit on January 1st. That's the way Amazon kind of does it. It's already got a little discount. I'm saying this because I won't have copies of Secrets of Antarctica at CCC Publishing for 3 more weeks until the second printing comes out. So I don't mind if people order, but they just have to understand it's going to be a little bit of a wait. But I can sign copies for people too if they order off of my website. There it is.
That's where it is.
Top of the charts.
Top of the morning to you. Add the cart. Boom. Yeah, that's cool, man. I'm definitely looking forward to my copy, and I want to go through those maps and stuff that you have in there. I think that'll be great. Also, I did want to let you know, folks. See, we got promoted in here on our X page here. I did want to let you know also, ladies and gentlemen, that if you can go back and listen to Brad and myself, several interviews. We've done a lot of interviews together. We've got them on Patreon. So jump on over to our Patreon page also. And if you want to listen to the phone conversation I had with the last surviving member of Operation Highjump, we've got that phone conversation on there as well. And I edited it out so you could hear him better because he was kind of quiet when he talked. So I got the audio levels as adjusted as possible. Robert Johnson, right?
Yep. That's amazing.
Robert Johnson. What a stud, man. Call me back at 103. Hey, how's it going? I missed your call. Sorry, because I called and I got a hold of his wife. His wife was like 101. So, man, they're doing something right, or something wrong. But I would definitely say they were doing something right because, yeah.
And Robert Johnson also said that he was given a gag order after Highjump and basically kept to that promise until the very last years of his life when you got to talk to him. And he also said that when Byrd came back from that flight with the 3 hours of missing time and everybody was like, oh my God, we thought you were dead. Congratulations. What did you see? That Byrd was white-faced, wouldn't talk about it, and he wouldn't even fill out a flight log for that flight into the hole in the ice. Wow. That he was already, this is according to Robert Johnson, that he was already pretty freaked out about everything that he saw. And he told Robert Johnson, don't forget, you saw it as well as I did, all the other anomalies that they had experienced during Operation Highjump.
Wow. So cool, man. So when are we going back out there, Brad?
Yeah, we still want to go to the Archuleta Mesa too in Colorado and
I don't know about that, man.
Out there.
I'm still kind of spooked out about that experience, but I'm thinking about it. I know of a mesa we can go to that's right across from the Archuleta Mesa, so we can be looking right at the mesa without as much concern about waking up or not waking up. Anyway, so Brad, this has been great, man. Really appreciate you. I hope you have an awesome day. And how's the weather out there? Didn't the whole city get like power shut down out there about a week or so ago in San Francisco?
It did in San Francisco, but I live out in Nevada now. I'm closer to Carson City and Lake Tahoe. And it's cold, but dry. We're going to get another storm, and I'm going to get up and go skiing in the new year when my pass isn't blacked out.
Yeah, if there's any. Good luck with that, man. How'd your pass get blacked out?
Well, it just is. It's a Tahoe local pass. So from Christmas to New Year's, they black it out, and then a couple other holidays, but that's it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So it's not because you're talking about Antarctica.
No, not because I'm talking about Antarctica. We got to punish him.
You can't ski for Christmas. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being here, and definitely want to pick up Brad's new book. It's available on cccpublishing.com as well as Amazon. And be excellent to each other, everybody, and be the change you want to see.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Night.